time to do it again. 55 minutes of robust business conversations is what we'll have here on Business Incorporated. And today, for the next 55 minutes, we'll capture some of those headlines. We'll be looking at the threats to food security in West Africa. Of course, our major focus will be in Nigeria. Other than that, Zimbabwe also has not so good news. Maize production has dropped more than 70% for this season. And in Ghana, they're celebrating a traditional ruler with the very first crypto stamp. Wonder how it looks like. Well, we'll look at all of that here on the program. You're welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we begin as usual from the global space, looking at oil prices. It rose in early trade on Thursday as shrinking U.S. crude inventories signal tighter supply, and amid rising hopes that the Federal Reserve would cut interest rates by the end of the year. We have the numbers right here on the screen, and it is green for Brent, 0.31% up, $83.81 a barrel. WTI from the United States, $79.28, 0.43%. And we know the major driving factor for this today's crude inventories from the United States dropped last week by 1.4 million barrels to 459.5, according to Energy Information Administration, and that's even more than what analysts expected. There's also the rising gasoline stocks, which swelled unexpectedly by more than 900,000 barrels in the week to 228 million barrels, and this has kept prices moving in this direction. We also talk about metals now. Gold has held ground. Investors are waiting that data that will show that interest rates will be cut this year by the United States. It slipped on Wednesday as investors awaited that U.S. data for clues on rate cuts. Spot gold we see is down 0.2%, $2,308.29. Spot silver is also down 0.3%, $2,316.30. Now, I think by Friday, there's going to be a meeting at the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment, and it's going to capture perhaps a direction to what will happen with the Fed official this week, because the Fed official will be there. So the United States Consumer Price Index is also due on May the 15th. That will also give a direction as to if or when interest rate cuts will begin. Meanwhile, the European Central Bank has all but promised a rate cut on June the 6th, and worries that a delay in the monetary policy easing by the U.S. Fed could also force it this time. But today, even as we speak, the Bank of England has already held rates. I think this is the 6th time, but we'll have Juliana later on the program telling us about this. Then this morning, during Business Morning, we did discuss the new maximum cover for bank deposits, the confidence you're supposed to give to banks, and how it works if you're afraid, perhaps if you're using one of those fintechs. A lot of uncertainty around them, but we had a former chairman of CIBN joining us to talk to us on this. That was on Business Morning.
Generally, with this policy, about 98% of all bank depositors in Nigeria will be covered in case anything happens. So that critical mass of the people or bank customers, they are now being protected, which means you have nothing to fear. In case a bank goes into liquidation, you will get whatever is the balance in your deposit account fully. No, immediately it happens. NDIC will call on all depositors to come forward. Proof that you brought money to this institution. The moment that proof is confirmed by officials of NDIC, it is what is payable to you immediately. The 5 million, the 2 million we are talking about is payable immediately. If NDIC is now unable to cover the total that is outstanding, when they start realizing the assets of such an institution, they start paying you instrumentally. But the figures we are talking about here, they are payable immediately in case of a liquidation scenario.
Yeah, that was earlier today during Business Morning. Let's look at that threat to food security. The latest report from the International Rescue Committee, the IRC, and its partners shows that around 16% of Nigerians will face severe food insecurity or hunger between June, that's next month, and August this year. Well, the figure for 2024 is higher when compared to the report for 2023 and denotes the increasing spate of hunger and the worsening living condition across not just Nigeria, but West and Central Africa. Let's take a closer look at this with the Managing Director of Banjoko Motunde Farms Limited, Mr. Tunde Banjoko. Mr. Banjoko, good afternoon. Another worrying number coming, but perhaps we can escape this.
Yes, we can. If we do what is required of us as a nation and even as a continent, it's possible it will not be as severe as projected. That will be my response.
Yeah, but it's just next month. What can we do? It's less than a month. They say 16% from June.
16%, you look at what are we talking about? The insecurities are, hindering people from pushing food, even from where they seemingly have some to where it is needed. So if we can still work around security in those areas, like they pointed out in the Northeast, in the Northwest, and a particular attention was mentioned about Sokoto and Zamfara in Nigeria. So if we are able to work around the security of those areas in Nigeria, we are likely to reduce the effects. And interestingly to me, if you look at the report that was shared some days back by Nigerians themselves, the Nigeria National Food Consumption and Macronutrients was telling us some days ago that we will have about 21% of Nigerians that are food secure. That's our own internal information, not even an international body now, telling us that even internally we are saying only 21% of Nigerians are food secure, 59 moderately, 20% are in acute hunger. So meaning these two information are aligning and calling our attention to something. So for us to avert this, I think we'll start seeing if there's possibility to push out anything from our reserve to those areas that have been pointed out to us. Maybe that would be my advice to the government at this time. Let's push out food from our reserve to those areas that are, and it says even 15% of our children are already suffering malnutrition. 15%. And like you rightly said in your opening statement, looking at this comment, it shows that as at this time last year, we are talking about 25 million Nigerians going through acute hunger in this lean period. But now we are talking about 32 million Nigerians. So meaning, what have we done, even as a nation, between last year and this year to avert something similar that we are seeing now? Meaning, if we don't do anything, probably it might be worse next year if nothing is done. But like I said, I think we should move food from our reserve. I think the government have done that one or two occasions, but we don't know how effective this have been, moving food from the reserve, grains especially, to those areas where it is. I think there should be effective monitoring of those movements now to avert this situation.
Mr. Banjoko, when you say move food from our reserve, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what's even in that reserve? Because remember that, consequent to the removal of subsidy and all of the cries and all of that, there was a directive from the president for some grains to be given out. So, I don't know what's left in that reserve if we're to go there. So, I think we should just look at how to produce. And from what I hear you say, insecurity is a major one. But even apart from insecurity, that, of course, is not something that should be underestimated in any way. But even apart from that, in the southern part where you don't have perhaps not that much insecurity as you have in the north, do you have the seedlings, the quality of the seedlings? Do you have the equipment to do mechanized farming that could give you bulk production? I guess these are the other areas also, even if those are not so long term.
I think, the National Food Consumption Report that I mentioned earlier while they were doing their research, they said some people told them that for 7 days, they've not had anything on them to be able to buy food. So this is talking about the economic effects now. So people are not financially empowered to even buy the basic things. So if a Nigerian is saying for 7 days, they've not been able to lay their hand on anything to be able to buy food. So we should be talking about our living conditions now. We look at the effect of some of the policies, the Naira, the valuation, the liberation of the forex market, the effect of even the oil that was deregulated, the petroleum, the subsidy that was removed last year, meaning some people are barely having, I look at it recently, so-called minimum wage of 30,000. Can we feed an individual, not to call family of 4, family of 5? So for us to be able to do this, then we can also look at the economic direction of reversing any policy that can be reversed so that people are empowered to be able to buy and purchase the basic things, items. I don't want to start giving numbers of is it rice, is it beans, is it yam? So if we can quickly look at some of our economic policies in the next few days. Of course, just a few days ago, another tax was brought, for deposit of online transfer. Further taxation or policies that are just impoverishing the citizens will push more people into these buckets. And, you look at this report, it was telling us, as at last year, all over this sub-region, our inflation average was 18%. This says about 21%, and some African countries are doing about 54% inflation. So we need to start looking at the financial aspect of this, our economic policies. I think that's also one major area, because like you rightly said, in the Southwest, we are relatively okay, but people are not empowered financially. The policies have not empowered people to be able to make any reasonable purchase. So we should start looking in that direction, not just about bootstrap yourself, but people are now bootstrapping themselves into hunger.
Mr. Banjoko, that reminds me of our last conversation when you talk about empowering people. We did talk about getting the managing director of the Bank of Agriculture, and I know we've been talking about that. And he says, well, he has to go through some protocols before he can come on air. But that's also it. When you talk about empowering people to get on the farm, the Bank of Agriculture is supposed to be top on that. But it doesn't seem that we're getting a whole lot from that area. The MP is your friend. You might as well speak for him, Mr. Banjoko.
What I would say to that is, I think I was still chatting some of them at the Ministry of Agri last week, the Federal Ministry of Agri, to say that the communication from that ministry has been very poor. In the last couple of years, it's been very poor. Now we are talking about food security. We are expecting a minister that will be going around with shirts folded from one area to another, seeing the work. This is not the time for meeting. And, I'm sorry to say, we also looked at the budget for 2024. We are still having some capital expenditure on buildings when we have not empowered our farmers. We look at this lean period. Why are we talking about lean period? It's because we have not produced enough. We have not produced enough as a nation. Let's leave the one going to waste. We know we still have issues with storage. We have issues with processing. But I think we should start from the basic one, which is production. So the Bank of Agri has to come online. They have to come active. The Federal Ministry of Agri has to come alive now. And I think we need to stop politicizing food. Food is a crucial thing. But it's a pity I see it as still being politicized in Nigeria. So even let's leave the federal. Now let's move to the states. How are the states prioritizing it? Last year, we were looking at the budget for most of these states in agri. Some of them have less than 1% allocated to agriculture. Less than 1%. Maybe about 2 or 3 states add something in 2-3%. And of course, at the federal level, we're also talking about 1.5%. So those are the reasons we have to keep looking at these numbers we are allocating and look at how we can effectively manage our fund in this direction. If not, these numbers are likely to keep going up. And of course, the more, the report also talk about how people will have to keep moving from one location to another, just looking for survival, looking at the effect on crime rates. So I think we should place more priority on food. It should be prioritized, like the president said, food security. I think I've not seen the body language following that statement. We should actually have all our actions and words aligning at this time. That will be my thought on that.
And don't forget, we still have that state of emergency declaration on food security.
But it's not treated as an emergency. Until you look at the individual numbers of, okay, how much is a bag of rice, how much is a bag of beans. We used to think Garri is for the common man before now, but now even a bag of Garri is getting close to over 30,000 naira, thereabouts. So meaning even to buy the Garri is not as cheap as we thought. And so we are talking of malnutrition, we are talking of several states. And like I said earlier on, even the numbers telling us only 21% can tell us as a nation can afford their basic needs when it comes to food. Those are worrisome figures. Those are worrisome figures that I'm wondering how our leaders are sleeping. And, the spending we see and what we read about how our national funds have been managed. So I think we have to, like I said the other time, prioritize how we can recapitalize Bank of Agric, get the ministry communicating with people, get our farmers empowered financially, get them secure, let them have the confidence, and then let's focus on production. If not, these numbers are likely to increase and soon might not be as palatable as we think. And we all have to get involved. Both the private sector and the government institutions saddled with these responsibilities need to come. We need to all just sit up at this time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, obviously, Mr. Banjoko, thank you so much. And as you noted right there, the threat of insecurity is very closely related to food security in the country. But thank you, the Managing Director, Banjoko Motunde Farms Limited, Mr. Tunde Banjoko.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break now. After the break, we'll head to the market. And Mr. Banjoko talked about Garri. Do you know that year on year, the price of Garri has gone up about 122%? We'll discuss that later on the program. Just stay with us. Well, Last is standing by, but we'll have Last later on the program. For now, let's head to the market where Will Ibong. Will, you were not here yesterday. Thankfully, Anita was able to stand in for you. I think you had to cover an event. But how's the market looking intraday?
Oh, well, we're seeing positive signs at intraday. Hopefully, we don't have that. I know you don't want to believe.
I don't believe.
I know, but
I don't believe in the market.
But take a moment and think about this, Ini. Yesterday there was a pause with the market closed flat. So I think there's just a breather, a pullback, like this, stand line, and it's like we're gonna go up.
You think because you're wearing a green?
Oh yes, and that's why I'm wearing a green today. Today is gonna rub off on the market. It's gonna mirror. The market's gonna mirror this positive sentiment and the color that I have on today. So just keep your fingers crossed.
The market color, yes?
Yes, yes, I do. Well, we're just going to go straight to the market. It's just not going to make me say or commit myself to how the market is going to close today. But major equities in Africa were trading with mostly positive sentiments at intraday. Nigeria's NGX showing signs of a rebound at intraday after closing flat in Wednesday's trading session. Now we see it up 0.11% at intraday, still at 98,000 points, still climbing. We're hoping it hits 99, and we're hoping it closes in the green today. Now South Africa, however, at intraday was in the red, down 0.19%. Elsewhere, Egypt's NGX 30 is up marginally at intraday at 0.04%. Now it's at 25,000 points. analysts predicted that correction was going to go to 26, but now we're seeing it at 25. But hoping that this positive sentiment returns to the market and keeps going up. Kenya's closed Wednesday's session in the green, 1.14%. Now we're going to check out what's driving intraday activities at the NGX. And joining us is Mr. Garri Garba, is the Chief Executive Officer, APT Securities Limited. Mr. Garba, it appears the bearish momentum has subsided for a bit as we see this rebound at intraday.
Yes, of course. And we expect this to continue up to the end of the week.
So what's going on? What's driving this sentiment? Can you just tell us the stocks that are moving the market at intraday? What's really giving this boost to investors right now?
The result. The result displayed by most of the banks for their first quarter shows serious improvement, particularly the GT. GT traded as low as 33, but quickly after declaring their Q1, it went as high as 41. And currently it's trading at 40, is likely to go back to 41 or thereabove. The same thing applied to the Dennis, the same thing applied to UBA and the rest of the stocks. So most of the Q1 that were released were very, very impressive. And that gives confidence to the investors to come back and start taking position. And this is what we are witnessing in the market, and we are expecting this to continue up to the end of the week.
So we're also seeing something going on with Nigerian breweries. They lost about 1 naira at intraday, like when I checked, and over 200 million units of stocks have been traded, and currently at 23 naira. What's going on there?
Well, a Nigerian brewery is not news to us. If you remember, during the COVID, traded as low as 19 naira, but quickly rebounds back to almost 66 naira. So the intraday that we witnessed today is not unusual to Nigerian brewery. But in most cases, people are taking position because even though they declare loss for 2023, we are expecting to see a positive result for 2024. So in view of that, people are taking position. And remember, this is the lowest price ever for the year and even the previous year. So we expect rebounding back in the Nigerian breweries as well as the Guinness, and so also to other manufacturing companies.
So what are the stocks right now? If you look at the market, what stocks are investors looking at? Are they buying? Are they selling off? What stocks do you see investors trading currently at intraday?
Currently, you see that the investors are trading more of the financial sector, banking in particular. If you look at GT has gained, Dennis have gained, UBA have gained, Sterling Bank have gained. And we are expecting more other banks are likely going to gain as they release their first quarter. Even First Bank today gain. So these are the most liquid stock. You can trade millions. So in terms of volume, in terms of value, they are number one. And that is the stock that every dealing broker is proud of, because you hardly get any broker without trading of this. The other one is the manufacturing sectors. If you look at it, Transcorp is bounced back. And we're expecting to see the same with the rest of the other manufacturing bank, the Nigerian breweries, the Nestle. So most of these are likely going to rebound back. And once this rebounds back, the market will go up for that.
So we're also seeing, that was the day before yesterday or so. Yesterday we saw some insider trading going on, Access Holdings, UBA. Is this move just to solidify investors' confidence in the companies, or what other thoughts do you have, Mr. Garri?
It's the new rules. Before, you don't know when the insider trading were taking place because there is no platform to report it. Now there is a platform that you report it. Insider trading keep on being reflected in the market. But what does that mean? It shows you the confidence of the insider on the company. Remember last year, when the insider trading of Transcorp, some of them have started taking Transcorp 3 naira. What happened to Transcorp? Before you know it, went as high as even 16 naira. What it shows you that the insider who know in and out of the company have confidence of the company and decided. But don't forget there is vested interest. Vested interest are those that are being rewarded because of the performance. Seblat have did it last year, and today we are witnessing it in Access Bank. And we are expecting more companies to borrow from them because rewarding the management, they are the key drivers of most of these companies. And if they can be rewarded in share form, it shows that they come to stay, and therefore it's better for all the investors. Because when there is good performance, it goes across the board. But the management, who are the key drivers, are being rewarded by the share. So vested interest has been declared by about 7 management staff of the Access Bank. I remember last year about 3 management staff of Sublat were rewarded. And you see what Sublat did for the 2023. So we expect a reputation in across the board, and we are expecting other companies that have not had this kind of policy should incorporate this policy whereby the management are being vested interest and rewarded with the shares where they have finished the threshold. Because there is a certain threshold given to the management. When they achieve them, they will be rewarded. And that's what happened. As regard to the UBA, it's purely insider trading because they use their own money to acquire more holding. And what does that mean? It shows you that the management have more confidence of that company. We have witnessed it last year for Transcorp, so we are not surprised to witness it for the UBA. Remember, even earlier this year, around April, we have seen the insider trading for the Transcorp Power. So across the board, it's a welcome development, and it gives the investors confidence that this company come to stay, and this company have confidence that they will do more better.
Okay, speaking of confidence, is the market going to close in the green or red? Just one word, Mr. Kofi.
It is going to close in green.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Kofi Garba, CEO, APT Securities Limited. We're going to hold you to that word. I want that green close. I'm rooting for it. And we're going to look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we look at other major stocks in the Middle East where we saw mostly negative sentiments at intraday. Abu Dhabi was down 0.52%. That's more than 0.5%. Same sentiment for Dubai. We look at Saudi and Qatari indexes very quickly. We see that Saudi is in the red, or nearly 1% down. And we saw that it was, pulled back by utilities and IT stocks. Qatar was the only gainer at intraday, 0.18%. And this was helped by 2.4% gain in Qatar navigation and a 3.5% rise in Qatar gas transport. Looking at the U.S., we see in early trade today, we see that the stocks were in the red. A lot of momentum is waning now. That bullish sentiment is already ticking down. Interest rates, we're waiting for it to, for that rate cut. But ahead of that, investors are already selling down. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you see it, 0.17% down. S&P 500, 0.18% down. The Nasdaq futures, 0.22% down. Let's look at Asia markets very quickly. We see Asia Nikkei in Japan, 0.34% down. The Kospi in South Korea is also down 1.2%. That's to close today's trading session. And we see in China, that's where we see the gainers. We see the Hang Seng Index up 1.22%. And we look at the Shanghai in mainland China, is also up 0.83% to close at 3,154 points. And in Australia, we see that red zone there. It's pretty much red for Australia for some time now. We're going to be looking at, keeping track of that market and see how that rebound happens. So the market is really not looking bad for Asia. It's kind of mixed sentiments there. US really red. We're waiting to see. Investors are looking at more earnings coming in from Disney, and we saw that Airbnb down 8% in their earnings for it's not looking good for some of these companies, but it's still earnings season and we're still waiting to see what results the companies turn out.
Around the world, and I'm glad to hear your guest, Mr. Kofi, say that perhaps the earnings is also pushing investor sentiment in Nigeria.
Yes.
So in this case, we are not different.
We're not different
from
at
the
all.
other world. But thank you so much, Will. All right, now let's move to the UK, where the Bank of England, they did meet up with expectation. And I think the question to ask now is, do we see an interest rate cut in the horizon, But let's have Juliana. Juliana, good afternoon. So now we have the decision. It's a hold, I think, for the 6th time. Does this bring us closer to an interest rate cut?
Good afternoon, Eddie. Well, I think that's the big question coming out of the city today. And I think all of the journalists who were present at Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England governor's press statement, which he delivers after the interest rate decision at noon. We're asking that because, of course, that is exactly what the markets are waiting on. As you said, for the 6th consecutive month, the Monetary Policy Committee have kept rates on hold at 5.25%. And as you already said, this was pretty much in line with what Citi analysts had anticipated. And this is really despite the fact that we have falling inflation. I believe, according to the latest data, inflation in this country is at 3.2%, still higher than the 2% target of the Bank of England. But if you think back to over a year ago, inflation was at double digits, at 11%. So it has fallen significantly, which is why there was some bettors suggesting that perhaps there could be a fall. I suppose the closest indication that we've had since that interest rates will suddenly fall sometime soon is the fact that it wasn't a unanimous vote. There are 9 strong committee members, and 2 of them actually voted to cut rates by 0.25% to 5%. So perhaps we will start seeing a fall in interest rates sometime soon, which could be June, perhaps July. Now, quite interestingly, I think we got some strong signals from Andrew Bailey during the press statement. He said some of, the unpredictability of the past has since waned. Of course, one of the reasons why inflation has been so high in the UK is started off because of the pandemic. We know that as soon as consumers came out of their shells, the demand for goods was elevated. And then, of course, we have that major war in Europe, which is still raging, that shot up the cost of energy and food. It's since fallen, but it is still quite elevated. And there is so much uncertainty about what is going to happen with the war in the Middle East. So there are some issues that are still teetering on the surface, but most of the majority, the ones that made inflation so high, have since stabilised. So yes, we will expect interest rates to be cut soon, but certainly not in the next 2 interest rate meetings, we think.
Yeah, but at least we can talk about it. That's the good thing. And then there's the British gas boss saying that almost 4 million meters are not working. And I'm wondering, so how's the billing done?
Yeah, it's a good question. Gas and electricity use in the UK is estimated. So I think the regulators look at, the time of the house, how many people you have in the household. But that's kind of an antiquated system, right? Which is why smart meters were introduced a couple of years ago. And according to the latest figures, I believe there are about 26 million households that use smart meters in the UK. But again, according to the details from Chris O'Shea, who is the Centrica chief executive, Centrica is basically the parent company that own British Gas. He was hauled in front of MPs yesterday in the House of Commons, and they were talking about what is happening with smart meters because of this data. I think it was an investigation, a double investigation done by the Times newspaper and the Guardian newspaper here in the UK. So he was having to answer some of these really difficult questions about his pay. I believe he received millions upon millions of pounds in bonuses last year, but also about what is going to happen with these smart meters, why some vulnerable customers are having debt collectors knock on their door, basically forcing them to have some of these prepaid meters in their homes. And he agrees with the government that this is a huge issue, particularly as these smart meters are used as a way of Britain transitioning into net zero, because if you have one of these smart meters in your home, you're able to look at your electricity usage and you're able to kind of monitor how much you're using if you keep your TV on standby, so it's off, but it's got that red button, whereas if you switch it off from the mains, you save energy. So that is why it has been introduced across the UK. But again, as I said, bills are estimated. And at a time when the war in Ukraine is pushing up the cost of energy, if your smart meter isn't working, then of course you could be paying so much more. So these are some of the issues that were discussed yesterday when Chris O'Shea was in the Palace of Westminster. And we'll just have to wait and see what this government does in response to some of the suggestions he put forward.
All right, Juliana, so let's head to the markets now. What's the sentiment at this time?
Yeah, sentiment pretty good, mixed, shall I say. Airtel Africa, they had their, I believe it was their first quarter results, not great. Their share price is down about 9%. They're the biggest faller on the blue chip index at intraday, weighing down the FTSE. The all shares down by 0.03%, the FTSE 100 up by 0.01%, but the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's down by 0.12% at intraday. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently trading up against the US dollar by 0.02%, up to against the euro by 0.12%, and the British pound is trading up against the Japanese yen by 0.35% at intraday.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Airtel Africa is making waves everywhere, even right here in Nigeria. Pulled out of the markets, I think, 2 days ago. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, now let's move to Europe. And you would have thought that only Nigerians love football. Not correct. Because over 2 days, and German soccer fans were glued to their television, hoping for an all-German Champions League final. They didn't quite get what they wanted when Bayern Munich lost against Real Madrid. And you would wonder what this has to do with business. Well, Lars has the connecting dot. Hi, Lars. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ini. Well, football is big business. That's certainly not new. And this year is one of those really big years with the Euro Cup being played between mid-June and mid-July, also here in Germany, by the way. And parts of Berlin are already now being prepared for this event, which will draw millions of fans into the stadiums and entertain billions around the world. Now, the Champions League is almost as big as the Euro Cup. It's a league that has the best teams of all the European countries play out their champion. And we were quite close to an all-German final with top teams Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich in the semis. Now, Borussia Dortmund actually made it, but Bayern late last night lost against Real Madrid. It's a financial loss too for the team because besides lifelong honor and bragging rights, clubs are earning handsomely. Up to the semis, clubs already earned 43 million euros each under the league's profit-sharing program. And just playing the final nets Dortmund now an additional 15.5 million, and winning the final would bring in yet another 5 million. So that's a total of 63 million euros that one club could get out of the Champions League.
And Dortmund is listed on the exchange. How are they performing at this time?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. When Borussia Dortmund first went public, the club sold shares at 11 euros, and at times they were listed at less than 1 euro. For the past few months now, they were pretty much stable in the 3 euro range, and now they got this Champions League boost, of course. The club announced right after the game that earnings will increase and that they're expecting a profit between 40 and 50 million euros this year. That's up from an earlier estimate of 33 to 43 million, and that pushed shares above 4 euros for the first time in about half a year. Still, it was often discussed, of course, whether or not football shares are a reasonable investment, and mostly, of course, they're not. Even the club's biggest shareholder says that financially it wasn't much of a success story. However, for many fans, owning a share of their favorite club is similar to owning a jersey or some other souvenir or even a season ticket to the games. It brings fans closer to the game, closer to the club. And that, to many, is worth more than any financial gain.
Yeah, well, I guess fans have to put their money where their passion is in this case. Thank you so much, Lars. All right, now let's go to that very important commodity. It's Garri. It's very staple food in Nigeria now. Unfortunately, even those at the lower level of the financial cadre in the country have not been spared, because even if you are depending on Garri as your staple food, the price has gone up about 122% in the last 1 year to 40,000 for 150 kg bag in the last 1 year. We know it's made from cassava, which is supposed to be produced in Nigeria. Nigeria is the leading producer of cassava on the continent. So why can't we cushion this? But let's have this conversation now with Ifoma. Ifoma is from Financial Derivatives Company. She joins us for this. Hi, Ifoma. Good afternoon. I think you should unmute. I see your lips moving, but I cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Hi, Former.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So one would have thought that Nigeria being a major producer of cassava, which is the raw material for Garri, that at least there'll be some kind of stability in the price of Garri in the country.
Yes, that's supposed to be so, but what we are saying is the contrary, and this is because of the high cost of food in Nigeria. We notice that food inflation is the highest when it comes to inflation numbers. And we see that a lot of people are beginning to look for substitutes. And Garri will be the fastest substitute because you spend less consuming Garri. You can either take it using your groundnut, you can take it with moi, with akara, with beans. So a lot of people are moving towards the consumption of Garri. And this has increased demand over time. And we have this supply-demand shortage or supply-demand gap, which is causing what we call the price dynamics of Garri that we're seeing today. Also coupled with the fact that cassava is the most important root crop in Nigeria as far as consumption is concerned. And you see that we have a lot of value chain when it has to do with cassava. It can be used for other things aside Garri. So the demand for those things are also high. That's why we're seeing a hike in the price of Garri this season.
Yeah, we know there are other derivatives from Garri, which can also serve as alternative. Do we see people turning the other way?
If you say Garri is even cheaper, you want to compare Garri to Sebo, or you want to compare Garri to what other alternatives do we have? Wheat? Another alternative, they are quite high. So Garri seems to be the substitute that is at least cheaper for now for people at the bottom of the pyramid.
And
so that's why
it doesn't seem like we have conversations around, what to do to boost the supply of cassava, to reduce the price, because of course when we have more supply, we can expect that the price would depreciate.
The issue is the issue we have is the technological gap. So we are seeing what we have. There's no value chain when it has to do with cultivation, processing, and the other stuff. So that gap is a challenge we have. So we need investors in that space to be able to fill in the gap.
All right.
I think that's what we need.
All right. Ifeoma Nwokolo, thank you so much for sharing your views with us this afternoon. Now, moving on to other African countries, the Zimbabwean government is forecasting staple maize production to drop by 72% in the 2023-2024 season, and that's worsening the country's food situation due to El Nino-induced drought. A crop assessment has shown this data from that crop assessment. Zimbabwe is one of the 3 southern African countries to declare the ravaging drought a national disaster after Zambia and Malawi made similar pronouncements. According to the government's crop assessment report, estimated maize production is 634,699 metric tons for the season, representing a 72% decrease from the previous session. And Zimbabwe consumes 2 million metric tons of staple maize every year. The region is reeling from its worst drought in 40 years, owing to a combination of the naturally occurring El Nino and higher average temperatures produced by greenhouse gas emissions. To cover the deficit, the government plans to import grain, with its private millers looking to source 1.4 million of white and yellow maize in the next 2 months from Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Argentina, and America. Zimbabwe has appealed for $2 billion from humanitarian agencies and well-wishers to be able to feed the millions of people. Microsoft is closing down its Africa Development Center in the continent's most populous nation, that's Nigeria. This will certainly lead to job losses. The center, based in the commercial capital, Lagos, was opened in 2022 as part of Microsoft's push to deliver high-end engineering and innovation solutions for the company. The company says it would, however, continue to operate in Nigeria, continuing to prioritize and invest in strategic growth areas. It was not immediately clear how many people would be impacted. In December 2022, Microsoft President Brad Smith said that Africa represented a burgeoning talent pool in contrast to declining population growth elsewhere. Microsoft at that time had more than 200 engineers in Lagos and more than 500 in Nairobi, Kenya. Now we'll go to Ghana, where they're having a kind of celebration. The Ghana Post Company has introduced the world's first crypto stamp to celebrate the reign of a ceremonial ruler in Ghana, unveiled on May the 5th. And this crypto stamp, developed as a non-fungible token, NFT, bears the images of Asantehene Otumbo Osei Tutu II, who is the ruler of the Ashanti people. Bice Osei, the managing director at the state-owned postal company, has expressed that the NFT stamp is more than just a technological innovation. It's a tool that aims to preserve the Ashanti's heritage and celebrate the traditional leaders' 25 years on the throne. Is this an endorsement to crypto activities in Ghana? I guess that's a conversation for another day. And talking about crypto now, we had dive into that space to see what's happening with the crypto, especially Bitcoin, followed by some other prizes for that. So if we could have the numbers for the crypto prizes, and then we could also tell you that some of the leading stories in that area. Of course, we do have that FTX settlement after that crash. Seems consumers are being promised that they're going to get paid back, and we're wondering how possible that is. But we'll find out from Solomon Amunde, who'll be joining us on the program. First of all, we see the index that it's agreed at this time. If we see the prices, that will be good to know how we're heading to the grid. If we could have the prizes, that would be a good one. Else we just go straight to Solomon. Hi, Solomon. Good afternoon. So we see a lot of leading headlines. The trading momentum, Binance accusing company of manipulation and all of that. And then we see that FTX promise of settlement after the crash. So good afternoon, Solomon. Let's look at this accusation of manipulation by Binance. What's that about?
Yeah, so basically it's about a company, TWF Labs, that made over $300 million via manipulating the markets in a system that we refer to as pump and dump or wash trading. And we all know that in the TradeFi ecosystem and world, this is a very serious offense. So you can imagine some companies doing this in the crypto ecosystem, taking from other users and adding it to their pockets. It's actually crazy, but Binance responded by sacking the whistleblower that called out this event. So that's basically what has been happening around this whole story that is still developing.
And then, well, this should be good news that for those who would want to believe the promise to settle all customers, their losses from the FTX crash. I wonder how that could work.
Yeah, it's actually no surprise that they are currently able to settle all their customers that lost funds during the 2022 FTX crash. Now, why is because if we look at the price of Bitcoin when that crash happened, it was around $17,000. And right now, the market has really appreciated. Like Bitcoin is sitting around $60,000 now. So you can imagine if then you were holding one Bitcoin on FTX and it crashed at around $17,000. and now you're being refunded. What they'll be refunding you is 17K, whereas one Bitcoin right now is $60,000. So technically speaking, you still lost about over 200-300% of your actual crypto value that you would have had right now, but they are refunding you the value as at 2022 November. So plus or minus, at least half bread is better than none. It's still a thing to rejoice.
Yes, I guess that would be the perspective of a lot of the investors, because a lot of people would have wondered, well, will it even happen? But are they able to reach all of the investors, or perhaps some people will get lucky and some people would not?
Well, currently, they have been able to recover over $14 billion, and the amount owed to creditors is about 11 point something billion. So they say that they would give a 9% interest, and they all have the database of everyone that had funds on FTX. So it's actually easy for them to distribute these funds back to the former users of the FTX platform. And they said they still plan to revive the platform afterwards. So we're still waiting to see if it will still be functional afterwards. But we all know how this recovery process can be. Most times it can take 5-6 years, and the users will still be waiting, hoping to get their funds back.
I wonder which investor will go back to the platform. I mean, once bitten and 10 times shy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Solomon, thank you so much for your views this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Amy.
All right, so that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We'll do this again for the final time this week, tomorrow, by God's grace, at 10 a.m. Do come back here and you will meet me right here. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.